going to probably zone in on just a few key concepts today, but we want to anchor a few concepts before we even start. So the title is Sensible Strategies for Weight Management. What does sensible mean? Sensible means sustainable, achievable, and that will work within your particular lifestyle. So when we think about sensible weight management strategies, we also want to ground this in the context of health, that actually healthy lifestyle choices, if we think about that first as our primary focus, then weight management will be a byproduct. So that's really the frame that we want to start the presentation today with: health first, sensible, sustainable, achievable choices that are going to work for your lifestyle. So I want to actually talk about a few things that aren't necessarily sensible and just hit on dieting. So we know from the literature that dieting for weight loss is often associated with weight gain. You get into a cycle of dieting, your metabolism slows down, you actually conserve fat, you lose muscle, you burn fewer calories and lose less weight. There's a cycle, you stop dieting, you go back to eating, you gain your weight back. There are negative effects when you're on a diet, emotionally, physically, cognitively, and longer term negative effects of dieting can include the mental health problems, nutritional deficiencies, vital organ damage, and even osteoporosis. So we want to say dieting, put aside your concepts of dieting today, but that's hard to do. Why is it hard to do? Is when you're out in the world, there's a lot of messages about how dieting and losing weight will help you feel better about yourself. So we invite you today to actually just set aside some of the cultural messages out there about weight loss and how weight loss is associated with worth, and invite you to begin to think about setting your own standard for health and worth. Also want to address a few common myths that are not sensible when we think about healthy lifestyle choices. How many of you have heard, I'm not losing weight or keeping my weight off because I lack willpower? Well, your willpower is probably better than you imagine. We overeat for many reasons besides lack of willpower. We overeat because of stress, because of lack of awareness, because of processed foods. And we're going to talk about this today. Another myth: if I just eat the right foods in the right amount, I'll lose weight or maintain weight. Okay, that's half the story. How you eat and why you eat is the other half of the story, and we'll talk about that today. The other myth is experts are the ultimate source of information. We are going to share some of what we know about from the principles of whole foods nutrition and principles of health behavior change today. But we ultimately believe that you are the best expert in your own health and in your own lifestyle. So we want to encourage you to tune in to your own wisdom as we talk about some of these concepts today. Okay, so our agenda. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we eat and the power of awareness. And Ann Curtis is going to talk about how we eat, and then Sarah's going to talk a little bit about what we eat. And this is going to shape why, how, and what are factors that can help us achieve sensible, healthy lifestyle. Okay, in the context of our three concepts today, we're going to introduce a case study, and we want to introduce you to Sue, and we're going to talk about Sue and make recommendations for Sue as we go throughout the presentation. Sue is a 59-year-old married female. She has 2 adult kids, 2 grandkids. She has a long history of dieting, losing weight, but gains it back. She's overloaded with life, has lots of demands of work and family. She kind of approaches her weight loss with similar rules. Okay, I must do this, I have to do that, sense of pressure she puts on herself. She calls herself a stress eater. She's a caretaker. often overwhelmed and tired. She's self-conscious about going to the gym, and she doesn't have time. Anyone can relate to aspects of Sue? Okay. So, understanding why we eat when we do, contributes to a sensible, healthy lifestyle. All right, the power of awareness. So what is awareness? Yeah.
Awareness is when you're conscious what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Awareness is presence. It's a quality of being tuned into what is going on for you as you are experiencing that in a moment-to-moment basis. It's being aware of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you touch, on a moment-to-moment basis. So let's do an activity, an exercise. I actually invite you to put your paper down, sit comfortably in your chair. I actually even invite you to close your eyes. Much of the stimulation from the outside world begins to disappear with our eyes closed. And I'd like you to pay attention to just what it feels like to be sitting in your chair right now. Noticing the way your buttocks or sit bones feel on the chair, how your feet are planted on the floor. Notice where your hands may rest on your lap, on the side of the chair. Notice your posture. Is it erect? Is it slightly slumped? And begin to pay attention to your breathing without trying to change it or force it. Just notice your breathing as you're breathing in this moment. And see if you can even pay attention to one breath cycle on the in-breath and the out-breath. Perhaps you can notice the slight rise and fall of the abdomen, the inhalation, the exhalation, or even how the air moves through your nostrils on one in-breath or out-breath. And now I'd like you to bring your attention to your thoughts. Notice the thoughts you're having in this moment. You might have a thought about this exercise. You might be thinking about what you forgot to do this morning, what you need to do next. You'll be thinking nostrils. When was the last time I heard that word? Whatever you're thinking, just notice the thoughts as they are. And now begin to pay attention to your feelings. Notice what you're feeling in this moment. Perhaps it's a pleasant feeling. Contentment, joy, maybe negative feeling or unpleasant feeling, restlessness. Maybe it's more neutral. Maybe you notice a combination of feelings. Whatever you notice, simply be aware of what you're feeling in this moment. Now I'd like you to bring your attention to your body sensations, noticing any areas of tension or relaxation that you might hold in your body. And we'll start with your feet and going up through your calves, your thighs area, noting tension or relaxation, coolness or warmth. As you move up through your buttocks, your abdomen, your lower back, moving through your chest and your upper back, up through your neck. A lot of folks carry tension in the neck and upper back region. Just notice sensations that you have in your body right now, bringing your awareness to your hands, up through your forearms, triceps, shoulders, neck again. Notice if you are holding any tension in your face, up through the top of your head. And now bring your attention to the sounds in the room. what you hear right now. My voice, perhaps your neighbor's breathing. Just notice what you hear, any sounds. And bring your awareness to your sense of smell. See if there's any detectable smells. Not a lot particularly to smell this morning, but just see what you notice when you activate that sense. Now bring your awareness back to your breath. And now open your eyes, come back into the room, and kind of shake around a little bit. Turn to a person next to you and share one thing you noticed about yourself that you didn't notice before this exercise. Okay, so you bring your attention back to the big group. And how many of you did notice something new that you hadn't paid attention to maybe before the exercise that you were doing? For some of you, yes, some of you no. What if we asked you to do an exercise similar to that before and after you ate? Might you become a little more aware of your patterns of eating? Well, this is the power of self-awareness applied to any behavior. What we know from the literature is when we pay attention to what we're doing, we're more able to exert influence on that behavior. I mean, this is that exists in all of nature, right? That when observation can help one exert influence on that. So when we bring this power of self-awareness to behavior, we're able to become more aware of what we're doing. And this is actually a concept called self-monitoring. And when we apply this to eating behavior, this is when we track what we eat and the impact of what we the impact of what we eat on us. So tracking food choices and impact. There is a very large-scale study going on right now, probably the largest study of folks who have lost weight and maintained weight loss over an extended period of time. Actually, you can get some of this data from the National Weight Control Registry. There's about 10,000 people who are participating in this study. And what these researchers are doing is tracking what it is these people do. They've been successful losing weight and maintaining it, because the maintenance and the sustained weight loss is what is often very challenging for most of us. And that one of the number one things that they find that these 10,000 people do is self-monitor, meaning they're aware of what they're eating and the impact of what they're eating on them. So self-monitoring can be helpful when, for those of you who are just at the beginning stages of trying to understand your own eating behaviors, if you know your pattern but you want to change it, maybe you want to reduce your sugar intake or drink less caffeine, self-monitoring can be helpful in changing a behavior as well. Lots of benefits. Increased awareness, accountability to yourself, way to track progress. You're actually able to see progress. When you see progress, you're more motivated to keep going. You are able to identify challenges. When you identify challenges, you can problem solve those to get back on track for the healthy lifestyle goals that you want to set for yourself. So it's kind of like being a little private investigator to your own experience. And I want to actually give you an example. So in the packet of information you have, there's a sample diet diary. It says diet diary. This is a tool that you can use to track your food choices for a week. This is actually what the nutritionists give patients here at the Bastyr Center for Natural Health. There's actually instructions for how to complete this diet diary. On the back of this packet says instructions for completing a diet diary. So this is a tool and a resource for you. But you actually don't even have to use this one. You can create your own. You could even text yourself. Sometimes people text themselves what they're eating. The point is, finding a way to track is the most important piece. If you ever did track and you wanted to review that with a nutritionist to find out a little bit more information about the impact of certain foods, we invite you to make an appointment with the nutritionist here at the clinic. Okay, so when we asked Sue to do this, and Sue discovered a few things about her pattern. She discovered that she eats breakfast in the car on the way to work, that she eats lunch and snacks at her desk, that her husband had recently retired, and now they eat together while they watch news at night for the television. They go out to eat a lot. She grabs sugary snacks in the afternoon, and she eats when she's stressed. Any of you can relate to some of these patterns? Okay, all of them, all right. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to maybe help Sue. But we want to just say something about stress. That stress impacts us on so many different levels and is kind of a regular part of life, right? But I want to talk just today briefly about stress and the impact on metabolism and what happens when we eat when we're stressed. So the part of the autonomic nervous system actually regulates the gastrointestinal function, and that's the part of our system that gets our stomach churning, gets our enzymes ready for digestion, helps us absorb nutrients in our bloodstream. It also tells us when to digest or when not to digest. We don't digest when there's no food. That makes sense. We also don't digest when we're stressed, when our body is in the fight or flight response. So, what does that mean? When our sympathetic nervous system is activated and our stress response is on and we're in a fight or flight response, our digestion, it's like a light switch, goes off. Contrary, when our parasympathetic nervous system is activated, maybe we've done a relaxation exercise, deep breathing, and our stress response is off, our fight or flight response is off, our digestion turns back on. Okay, so what does that mean? There's a lot of things happening biochemically, just in the digestive system when we are stressed. We actually secrete less enzymes, salivary enzymes. When the food makes it to our stomach, the proteins and the carbs and the fat, the breakdown of those is impaired. When actually then nutrients are absorbed into the bloodstream less because there's 4 times less blood flow going on when our bodies are stressed. There's also the activation of a hormone called cortisol, right, which is present when we're in acute and chronic stress states, and the main function of cortisol is to tell our bodies to store fat. So there's a correlation between stress and weight gain. We can often understand that through many factors, but cortisol is one of those. So what are some of the consequences of eating under stress? Well, we lose our ability to know when we're full and when we're hungry because our digestion is not working as well. Anne's going to talk a little bit more about hunger and satiety and how to tune into those cues. So we might overeat more, and therefore we gain weight. There's also a tendency to eat convenient foods. When you're stressed, grab something that's convenient. Convenient foods are usually can have deficiencies in nutrients that we need. We also might have more digestive distress, gas or bloating. There's 4 times less blood flow going to the small intestine. Chronic stress can lead to the development of irritable bowel syndrome, so digestive problems can ensue. So we want you to begin to notice for yourself how stress affects your eating patterns. These are just some questions to consider, and even beyond the talk today. Do you tend to eat more when you're feeling anxious or stressed? Do you eat less? How often do you eat under stress? What foods do you tend to eat when you're stressed? I know when I'm thinking about Cheetos, my stress level is about a 5. And actually when I go to the store and buy them and eating them, it's about an 8. So, do you feel full or hungry after stressful eating? Okay, some questions to begin to ask yourself. We asked Sue those very same questions, and she recognized that she has a pattern of stress eating. And we wanted her to look at that a little bit more, okay? So there's another sample in your packet called self-monitoring. On the other side of the diet diary is a self-monitoring, mood self-monitoring form. And this is a way to even to get more information about your eating patterns as it relates to your emotions and stressful experiences. So you can track how you feel before and after a meal to get a little bit more information about your own patterns. Sue discovered that she eats actually often in response to feelings of frustration and depression. So after doing this mood diary, she's like, yeah. She grabs a lot of sugary foods when she's feeling frustrated and depressed. That's when she has a tendency to overeat. Okay, a phenomenon called emotional eating. Emotional eating by itself, eating, cheersing when something's happy, we're feeling happy, we share some salsa and guacamole. I mean, once in a while, there's nothing bad in and of itself. It's when we turn to food to cope consistently with emotions, and mostly negative emotions, and that pattern continues, that it actually sabotages our healthy lifestyle goals and our weight management goals. Common cycle for folks who get into an emotional eating pattern. Emotions trigger overeating. You beat yourself up for getting off track, then you feel badly and overeat again. So it's a cycle that is hard to break, but not impossible. And actually, the good news is there's a lot of people successfully going to learn to break that emotional eating cycle. Many of the consequences of emotional eating are similar to those eating under stress. We lose our ability to detect when we're full and hungry, tendency to grab more convenient foods, similar consequences. So we encourage you to think about what emotions might trigger overeating for you. Some of the strategies that we talked with Sue about to address her emotional eating pattern, we want to share a few of those with you. First is to track and recognize that you might be in a pattern of emotional eating and using the monitoring form. Self-awareness, number 1. Learn to recognize true hunger from emotional hunger. True hunger comes on gradually. Emotional hunger is like quick. Okay? If you identify that what you're feeling is emotional hunger, learn to identify your feelings and find ways to express them in healthy ways. It could be learning to reach out and ask for help when you're feeling sad or anxious, talking to a friend, journaling. There's a lot out there on how people can help learn to identify and express their emotions more constructively. Learn to look for comfort elsewhere by replacing emotional eating with other pleasurable activities. So if you stop the cycle, you stop going for ice cream when you're sad, well, you want to do something else. So you want to be intentional about replacing that with something else. So we talked with Sue about drinking tea, having tea in place. So she'd grab tea instead of grabbing some of her usual comfort foods. She said she gets a lot of support from her daughter, so she'd call her daughter when she maybe was feeling down or anxious. Taking a bath is something that she felt like would bring her some comfort, and spending more time with her grandchildren. So identifying other things that she can do that can bring her comfort. We all have a need for comfort, and to learn how to get that met in ways that are going to be consistent with our health goals, instead of kind of sabotage maybe the things that we want for ourselves. And then finally, if there's challenges in breaking that cycle, seeking professional help to get support for changing that pattern. So the power of self-awareness can help you understand maybe why you eat, and 2 very common reasons why we eat that sabotage healthy lifestyle goals are stress and emotional eating. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Anne.
All right, thank you. So as we move from some of the whys to some of the hows, I just really want to pause for a moment and say how continually amazed I am by how important how we eat is, right? It plays such a huge role in our wellness. So before we get into this, I want to ask you 2 quick questions, okay? And your job is to come up with answers to these questions as quickly as you can, right? Top of your head. So, what color is this piece of paper?
White.
What do cows drink?
No.
Interesting, right? So interesting, yeah. So, thanks, Fast Brain, right? Like, we asked our fast brains to do something really fast, and fast brains are super helpful at doing things fast, right? And they're very useful in lots of parts of our lives, right? If there's a saber-toothed tiger that's thinking about having me for lunch, I'm totally going to call on my fast brain, right? But it turns out fast brain tends to jump in and not let the rest of us that might know a lot more about what, for instance, cows actually drink, to actually have time to come through. And what happens in our lives is that we're surrounded by messages a lot of the time about how we should do things faster and more, right? Especially when we've got fast food, we drive in the fast lane. And if there are parts of our lives where we're not always feeling successful in reaching our goals, a lot of the messages are, do more, do it faster, right? And it turns out that actually, that might be exactly the opposite. In fact, I think we had a quote earlier from Mark David, who wrote a great book called The Slow Food Diet. And he actually suggests that going fast may be exactly the problem, right? That if you've worked for stronger metabolism but have not achieved success, right? So if you're not reaching your goals in terms of your energy level, your wellness, your weight, there's one basic reason why you're moving too fast. So our theme for this portion is slowing down. Not always easy, but we want to talk a little bit about what happens when we move too fast, right? And Dr. House has talked about all of the wonderful benefits that we can get from awareness, right? And when we're moving fast, we're missing all those opportunities for awareness, and we're easily distracted. And it turns out that that has really profound impacts on how we feel, how we eat, and the choices that we make. One of those areas is satiety. Dr. House has already mentioned satiety is a sort of wonderful feeling of satisfaction, right? That's when we've had exactly what our body needs, right? It's not full like, oh my gosh, too much, too much. It's just right, right? And our body has this incredibly wonderful, complex, sophisticated system for telling us when we're there. The challenge is it takes a little bit of time. And just like that freight train, like we can blow right past it. And all of a sudden we're 5 steps past that perfect place of exactly what we needed, okay? So we need to slow down to give ourselves time to do that. But again, we're in this world that says fast, fast, fast. So we actually have to use tools to help ourselves kind of slow down a little bit. And we want to do that before we eat, during a meal, and after. And one of the tools that we can use is the hunger scale. And that's another thing that you guys have in your packet, all have in your packet here. And the hunger scale goes from 0 to 10. 1 and 2 is in that I'm ready to eat anything that's not nailed down, right? So hungry. You know, what brain do you think is making decisions at that point? Is it the slow, considering, aware brain, or is it super fast brain? It's super fast brain, right? So if we spend a lot of time in this 1 to 2 kind of range, we're not necessarily using all of our opportunities for awareness that are going to help us make the best choices for what we really need and want at that point. Up here, in the 8, 9, 10 range is the after holiday meal, I might never want to eat again. I feel actually unwell because I've eaten so much, right? So if I spend a lot of time up here, I've gone right past what my body actually wants and what it needs, right? So I just keep filling and filling past what it's actually asking for. So a lot of times we get sort of a good guideline is to spend some time in that middle range, right? If we can spend more time in the 4 to 7 range. But what I want to invite you to do today is actually, before you even worry about being in a particular range, is just to pay attention, right? Again, use that power of awareness to really see what happens and recognize your own patterns. So one thing that you could do would be to use your self-awareness log as a place to record. Just pick one meal out of the day, right? Maybe do this every day this week for lunch or for dinner. And before you sit down to the meal, just stop for a moment and really pay attention to your body and ask it, okay, so where are you on the scale right now? And there are little descriptions of what each of these stages feels like. Then halfway through the meal, when you've eaten half of the food on your plate, pause for another minute and just ask your body, okay, where are you right now? And write down a number for that on your self-monitoring log. And then after the meal, same question, right? And I think that what you'll find is that using this scale gives you a lot of really useful information about what happens when you eat and how you're paying attention to those cues, okay? So Hunger Scale is one of the tools that we can use for learning to slow down and pay attention. So now another opportunity to close your eyes. Always a chance to close your eyes. Close your eyes for a minute. Now what I want you to do is recall the best meal you ever remember eating, right? And think about, just bring it back into memory and notice what you notice about it, right? Notice what it looked like, what sounds were happening, maybe what it tasted like, what it felt like. Really take a moment to remember what that felt like. Okay. How many of you feel like the most important thing, the thing that made that meal so fabulous, was the volume of what you ate? Was it the mass, right? Was it just like, wow, that was the best meal ever because I ate more than any other time? No, what were the kinds of things that were so amazing about it, right? When you thought about the sounds, did any of you hear the sounds of people that you were with, maybe, right? It's sort of maybe you were eating with friends, maybe it was a beautiful experience, maybe it was a celebratory experience, right? Maybe it was all of those, the senses that you brought into it, right? And it turns out that there's a very fancy name for this, and it's called the cephalic response. Here's the technical definition. It's the autonomic and endocrine reflexes involved in the metabolism of food that are triggered by sensory contact with foodstuffs rather than by post-ingestional consequences of food, right? That's what it says in the journals, right? So what does that mean? What that means is that paying attention to the role that our senses play in our experience of food, right? What it tastes like, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like, right? That all of those things, our experience of the entire process of enjoying that meal is not important only, it is very important for it, but not just important for how we feel about it and how we enjoy the meal, that it actually impacts the nutritional response that we have from it, right? It impacts what our body gets from that meal, how it nourishes us. Fascinating study done in 1987. So they gave a bunch of people some mineral water, and they tested how well their body was able to absorb the nutrients in the mineral water. Okay? Well, it turns out that when they were drinking the mineral water and they were just left in peace to be able to enjoy their mineral water, nothing else going on, they were able to absorb 100% of the nutrients. Okay? But when they were stressed, their ability to absorb those nutrients dropped dramatically, right? For some of the reasons that Dr. House was talking about, all this stuff, digestion shuts down, all these things happening. So what was the stress, right? What was so stressful that their ability to absorb those nutrients decreased? Distraction. So what they did was they had two people talking to the folks who were drinking the mineral water under stressful conditions. One was talking about space travel, the other one was talking about financial planning, and simply listening to this distraction was enough for their bodies to say, I'm stressed, right? Because when there's lots of things going on, our body says, whoa, that's a stressful situation, and it brings online all of those sympathetic responses, right? And says, oh, gotta get ready for fight or flight, and it shuts down all those parasympathetic impulses, right, that are so important for digestion and absorption and so on. So distraction, turns out, it's a pretty big deal. And we live in a multitasking world. So I want to invite you to spend a little time over the next week, perhaps, single tasking, right? Just eating and fully experiencing your meal while you're doing it. How much can you slow down? Right? We'll talk about goal setting in a few minutes, but I know it's not necessarily realistic to say, okay, everybody's going to set aside 4 hours for every meal, right? That's not going to happen. But if you're eating your lunch in your car for 5 minutes right now, could you do 10 minutes, right? Could you slow down just a little bit, right? So again, if you're really aware of where you're starting from, and then think about what's a small change that I could make that would really allow all of the tools that my body already has to be used to their best advantage, okay? Bring some mindfulness and pleasure to your meals. Really use all of those senses, because they estimate that 30 to 40% of our digestive process is actually connected to those cephalic reflexes or responses, right? 30 to 40% of how our body processes food is actually about what's happening up here, right? How we smell it, how we hear it, how we see it.
I was just going to say, what comes to mind is watching the news about disasters and eating your meal.
If you think about that, sort of, TVs are new, right? This ability to get news from far away is a pretty new thing in terms of how long humans have been around. So your body's saying, saber-toothed tiger, saber-toothed tiger, saber-toothed tiger, right? And of course, then you're absolutely right.
War, accidents, murders, it's while you're eating.
Absolutely. So really giving yourself a chance to have that full experience without those distractions, without telling the signals that are telling your body, oh, I'm in danger now. Absolutely. So thinking another important tool that we can use.
If after the meal you turn the TV on and you have distraction from the news, will that slow down your processing of the food?
That's a really good question, yeah. So digestion takes a little bit of time, right? So again, as soon as your body thinks that it's in that, it needs to turn on the sympathetic system, right? Then the digestion shut down. So giving yourself time to really experience the before and during and after is really important, right?
Is that why the Mexicans have a siesta?
That's what
That's
you
sleeping
eat
time?
You're not supposed to go to sleep after you eat either. But I have a suggestion.
What's that?
Not even to save time to talk about a controversial subject during a meal time, so you can have an argument while you're eating.
So no.
I remember that when I was growing up, my parents never permitted talking. It was just only eating.
Just enjoying, yeah. And certainly pleasant conversation can be a wonderful part of the meal. That's part of our full experience, right? And the celebration of sharing with people. But I think that's a great suggestion, right? Keep the controversy for later, post digestion, right? Controversy after digestion. So another tool that we can use in terms of thinking about, again, fast brain, super useful for some things, but not necessarily super useful for really having the full opportunity to be aware and make the most sensible, healthy choices for our food, is to recognize that under some circumstances, our fast brain's going to get there first, right? So what we can do is actually use planning and goal setting as a way to take some of that work before, right, when we have plenty of time, right? So when we think about planning and setting goals, we want to, anybody heard of the SMART model for goal setting? This is used in lots of different areas, used in business and many areas. It's a great tool for thinking about setting goals that are most effective. So we want goals to be SMART, right? And SMART means that they're specific. So when we asked Sue to put together some SMART goals, she wanted to make sure that her goals were specific so that she knew exactly what she was going to do. Right? They're going to be measurable, so she's going to know exactly whether she's met her goal or not. Right? I'm going to make better choices about food. Well, how do you know if you've done that or not? Right? You want it to be measurable. It has to be attainable, which means that she has all the tools that she needs in order to be able to meet those goals. They're realistic, right? Which means it's actually going to happen in her life, right? We already know that Sue's got a lot of stuff going on. She's got a family, she's got work. So it has to be something that's going to fit within her life. And it has to be time-bounded, so she knows exactly when she needs to do it, okay? So there's a resource list with some other information about SMART goals. I'm happy to answer any questions about those later, but let's give you some examples of what that looked like for Sue, okay? So her goals that were going to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bounded, she decided that she was going to record her hunger level in her food awareness journal, as we talked about, before, during, and after her dinner 5 times this week. Okay? So she was just going to take a moment before, ask where she was on the hunger scale, write that down. Halfway through her meal, she was going to record her hunger at that point, and then after the meal. This week, 3 times this week, she was going to take 15 minutes to eat lunch instead of 10. Right? Not a huge change, but it's specific, it's measurable. She's got all the tools she needs, she can fit it into her day, and she knows exactly when she needs to do it. Right? She also decided that she was going to turn off the TV and single task during dinner each day this week. She was going to eat at the table as opposed to eating in front of the TV or at the counter. And she was going to take a moment to appreciate her meal before she started to eat, right? So she was just going to have a moment really appreciating the food that was in front of her. And she also decided that she was going to schedule one meal with friends this week. Okay? So again, all of those are things that she knows exactly what she needs to do. She knows whether she's done them or not. She knows when she's doing them. She has all the tools and the things that she can fit into her life. I think that is where I'm going to transition or turn it over to Sarah.
So now we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what we eat. And this is really what we usually focus on, right? This is what diet books tell us. You can open up any magazine and it's going to tell you the 5 new superfoods that will help you drop 20 pounds in 2 weeks. This is what we focus on a lot. And often in the nutrition clinic, when people come in and see us, they want to know exactly what do I eat for this. But I want to just remember to focus that this why we eat and how we eat that Dr. Hofstas and Ann talked about are so critically important, possibly even more important than exactly what we eat. That being said, there are still some things that we can talk about here. One is thinking about this restrictive, rule-based approach that we often take towards eating. So we might cut out whole food groups or only eat at certain times of the day, or eat certain food combining certain things with other certain things. And I want to encourage you to start moving away from that kind of thinking and instead start thinking of what can we add into our diets that make us feel healthy, that make us feel energetic, that give us vitality. What are those foods? And by using, especially what Ann was talking about with slowing down and noticing how those foods feel in our bodies, we can start to get really good information about what those foods are, because they're going to be different for each person in this room. We're all in different bodies. They're even going to be different for ourselves at different points in our lives depending on what's going on. So really taking the time to slow down and feel how foods feel in our bodies is going to give us good information on what's supporting health and what isn't. That being said, we can make a general shift towards moving towards more whole foods. So what is whole foods besides a grocery store? You can ask yourself a few questions. The first one is, can you imagine it growing? So if I'm holding an apple here, I think most people, I certainly can imagine it growing on a tree, on that little stem that comes out of it, just sitting there on the tree, growing. So that's, I can imagine that. How many ingredients does it have? So a whole food just has one ingredient. In the apple's case, the apple. How much processing has occurred is a really important question to ask yourself. So what's happened from the time something was picked or harvested to when it's ended up in the supermarket or farmer's market or wherever you buy your food? This is important for several reasons. A lot of processing takes ingredients out of food to make them more shelf stable. So we might be taking out vital nutrients and fiber and fat, healthy fats out of something because they often oxidize and go rancid quickly. So we're taking those things out so our body isn't getting things that it needs. Also, we may be adding things in that aren't very healthy. So adding in trans fats that stay on the shelf longer, or adding in refined sugars, or what else?
Or putting preservatives.
Preservatives. So we add chemicals into our foods that may or may not be health supporting, probably aren't as health supporting as eating the original whole food. So that can be a good just thing to think about. And if we take the example of an apple, sometimes even just that apple has had some processing. Sometimes we put wax on it to make it look a little shinier. But for the most part, not much processing has occurred. Then we ask ourselves, is it part of the food or is it the whole food? Obviously for whole foods, you're going to want to have the whole food. And how long have humans consumed it? So is this something that has only been on supermarket shelves for a couple of months? Or is there evidence in traditional cultures for hundreds or even thousands of years of these foods being used to sustain health? So those are good things that we can think about, or questions we can ask ourselves for foods. Taking the apple example a little further, another reason why whole foods are something that you can focus on and add more into your diet is because most whole foods contain several aspects of nutrition. So for the apple, in the skin, we're going to get vitamins, we're going to get fiber, we're going to get bioactive compounds like quercetin, which helps reduce inflammation. Inside the apple, there's more fiber. Fiber is going to help slow our blood sugar response to the sugars that are in the apple and also help us feel full. And then there's the sugar for energy, and there's also water in there for hydration. So a lot of things in just an apple. If we think of apple juice, on the other hand, which still a lot of times only one ingredient. So if we're getting unsweetened apple juice, it's just apple juice. And that's a fine food, fine beverage, but when we think about how we feel compared to when we eat an apple, you're probably not going to feel full after drinking apple juice. And your blood sugar is going to go up because there's no fiber to help slow that response. So it's different. Now, does this mean to kind of take it back to that restricted, that I'm only going to eat whole foods all of the time, never eat any processed foods? No, of course not. That doesn't fit into the sensible approach that we're trying to encourage here. But what we are trying to do is add in more whole foods. So we're getting all of the nutrients that a food has to offer. Okay, so let's take a minute to think of how that might translate into a meal. You have a sheet of paper that has a big circle on it that represents a plate. And we're going to do the healthy plate model here. So find the circle. And draw a line cutting that circle in half, so you have 2 halves now. So on half of the plate, we're going to start thinking of vegetables, and these are non-starchy vegetables. So we're going to save corn and potatoes and squash and carrots for another part of the plate. But vegetables and fruit. And to help you out a little bit, here's some vegetables that are in season right now in Seattle. And you can write down your favorite vegetables, ones from this list, ones you want to try, and that's going to comprise half of the plate. So just take a couple moments to jot a few down. Okay, so moving on to the other part of the plate, and this can be a work in progress, so I just encourage you to keep adding things to your list as you move through the week, maybe, of things that you like. So on the other half, I want you to cut that one in half so you have 2 quarters on the other half of your plate. And 1/4 of the plate is going to be your protein source. So here are some examples of protein sources: meat and eggs, nuts and seeds, beans, tofu and tempeh. And while you're writing down something that you like or things that you like in that category, I'll just say a little bit about why moving more towards sustainable and free-range and grass-fed meats and animal products can be more of a whole food choice. If we take, for example, a cow, and let's say that cow has been able to walk around on grassy pasture and eat its own whole foods diet of grasses and has gotten plenty of movement, that's going to be a healthy animal. Just like we're healthy when we get plenty of movement and we eat good foods. So in that cow's body, they're going to have more vitamins and minerals, and they're going to have less inflammation. And then we eat that meat and we get the benefit of that. Now, in contrast, if we have a cow who was kept in confinement and was given a diet based on grains like corn and soy and didn't get to move, and because of eating foods that weren't good for it, developed inflammation, which then we need to give them antibiotics for and give them growth hormones so they grow faster, then that animal's meat just isn't going to be as healthy. And there's going to be more inflammation, and then we take that in and we take in their imbalance of fats. And that's present in the meat or in the milk or in the eggs. So we can start thinking about maybe shifting, even if we eat a little bit less of these animal products but have them be higher quality, then that can be a way to get more health and nutrition out of our protein sources. Okay, so the other quarter of the plate is going to be your whole grain or your starchy vegetables. So again, those starchy vegetables are things like sweet potatoes, all the lovely pumpkins and squashes that are out right now, carrots, corn, and then also whole grains such as brown rice and quinoa, buckwheat, whole wheat. So write down things that you like to eat in that category.
Where would you put edamame?
I would put that under the protein. Yeah, because it's soybeans. So, yeah, the beans go in the protein. Good questions. All right, and so there's still one thing missing on this plate, even though we have filled up the entire thing, and that is that each meal should contain a healthy fat. And this is important because healthy fats do a lot of good things in our body. They help us absorb some vitamins. They help us feel full. They're important for mental health. They're important for decreasing inflammation. And a lot of times these will already be present in one of the other categories that we talked about. If I'm already having a big piece of salmon with my meal, I've got plenty of healthy fats there. If I've added some nuts or some seeds to my salad, I'm getting healthy fats there. If I've made my own salad dressing, maybe with some flaxseed oil, then that's a great fat that would help in this area. So just keep that in mind and realize that it may already be present in the meal, but that's definitely something that we want to have at every meal. Now, sometimes we will eat like this. We'll have, maybe some sauteed kale and chicken breast and some brown rice. And sometimes we eat more, something that's all put together. And this is a great way to eat. So I wanted to give an example of how it looks when it's all mixed together. So this is a red bean and quinoa chili, one of my favorite vegetarian chilies in the cookbook, Feeding the Whole Family by Cynthia Lair. And in here we've got vegetables, onion, tomato, red bell pepper, and garlic. We've got protein in both the kidney beans and the quinoa. For starch, we have the quinoa again and the corn. And then for healthy fat, I like to sprinkle pumpkin seeds on top of mine and have some cultured whole fat sour cream. So this is already a whole meal. I don't need to try to add other things to the plate. I can just eat the bowl of chili for dinner and be satisfied on a lot of different levels.
What is quinoa?
Oh, that's a great question. So quinoa is, it's not a grain, it's a seed, but you cook it like a grain, and it's these little, it's a small grain, and it cooks quickly in water, just like how you would cook rice. And it has kind of a nuttier flavor, but there's a lot of good recipes out that use this, including this one.
It's delicious and it takes 10 minutes.
It only takes 10 minutes, which is really nice. It also makes a great breakfast porridge. Yeah. Yes, it is. And you can get it in the bulk food section at like PCC or Central Market.
You can also sprout it in like 12 hours.
You could sprout it. And that's the great thing about a lot of whole grains is there's so much that you can do with them. That if we start thinking in different ways and trying out some new things, we may find things that we really like that we haven't tried before. Yes?
You got whole fat sour cream. Do you also believe in whole fat yogurt versus low fat yogurt?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do, and following with a whole foods approach, I think taking the fat out of our dairy products contributes to not feeling as full. So then now I need a dairy product plus something else to make me full, instead of just being able to eat maybe a smaller amount, but the whole food that's going to leave me satiated.
Let alone the fact that it has been processed to take the fat out.
Right. Exactly, yeah. So there's more processing. And that's a decision that each person can make for themselves, especially depending on how your digestion handles dairy products. But in general, I would lean more towards keeping everything in it that's already there.
Sorry for the interruption, but I was surprised the first time I heard the percentage of fat in whole fat.
Right.
Like in milk, it's 4%. So 2% is half of what the full fat is. It's not that much. It's not like 50%.
Right. It's not heavy cream. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Great point.
On a fat-free milk, do they add sugar in the processing of fat-free milk?
I don't think they do regularly, like if you just buy skim milk, but certainly some, a lot of things are added to different foods, and you always want to check the ingredient list to see what may have been added in processing. And I encourage you over the next week, where it says healthy plate meal, to just think of some meals that you already make that may fall into these guidelines, like the chili. Like you may have some things that you already make that have all of these components that you can easily go to, like on a weeknight dinner. Okay, so back to Sue. Sue often eats out, and we decided to work on, she wanted to look at her lunch and how she did not want to have to bring lunch from home, so we thought of some ways that she could get a Whole Foods lunch while she was out and about. PCC, she decided, is close to her work. They have a great selection of soups each day with whole grains like brown rice and maybe a salad. that she could eat. Also, Chaco Canyon Cafe was near her, and there's a resource guide in that packet that lists Seattle restaurants that have Whole Foods options. So if she had a little more time and maybe was meeting a friend for lunch, then maybe she could go there. And she wanted to make a goal of sitting down to enjoy her meal instead of eating in the car. So even if it was just, if she only had 7 or 8 minutes at her desk, still sitting down, enjoying the meal, and focusing on it instead of eating back on the way to work. We wanted to spend a little bit of time today also talking about how movement plays into this. And again, a lot of times when we think of this, we think of exercise and the newest exercises to do, or going to the gym for an hour a day, every day, no pain, no gain, feel the burn. Those kinds of ideas are the things that we get about what's really going to make a difference in our bodies. But I want us to think about, instead of exercise, whole movement, like Whole Foods, but whole movement. So these are going to be things that are going to feel good in our bodies. Again, are going to be different for each person in this room, because we're all in different bodies and enjoy different things. And things that really bring us joy. So what is whole movement? So here are some questions to consider. Does it bring you joy? So not just afterwards because you're glad you're done, but do you actually feel happy while you're doing it? Does it feel good in your body while you're doing it? Do you look forward to it? So are you kind of dreading going to that workout class after work? Or are you looking forward to maybe going on a walk with a friend on Sunday? And then, does it engage you on more than one level? So most movement engages us on a physical level, but can you get some emotional needs met through it, or some social needs, or some spiritual needs met as well while moving? So just ideas to start considering. With Sue, she let her gym membership expire a couple months ago. She was feeling self-conscious about going to the gym, just making a lot of excuses because she didn't want to go. And so we brainstormed some activities, and she decided that she wanted to take her grandson back to an indoor trampoline park where he had had a birthday party, but she didn't get a jump, and it looked like so much fun. So she wanted to take him back there and try it out herself. She thought that having coffee with a friend while strolling around the Arboretum, especially with all the fall leaves right now, would be really nice. And as it starts getting colder, she's always wanted to try out snowshoeing. So maybe going snowshoeing with her partner this winter is something she'd like to try. And she set a goal for this week to go on that walk with her friend one afternoon after work, and to also play tag with her grandson on Sunday when she sees him. So I want you to take just a couple of minutes and turn to the person next to you, and I want you to think of 2 things. One is something that you could do right now. You don't actually have to do it, but something you could do without a change in clothes, without any equipment, something that you could do movement-wise right now, if you had to. And then also think of a whole movement activity, something that engages you on more than one level that you could do this week. All right, can I get one example of something someone came up with for something they could do right now without changing clothes, without any equipment? What was your idea? Yeah?
Dancing.
Dancing, yes.
Either go dancing or dancing for living.
Dance right here, yeah. I won't make you do it. And what about somebody's whole movement activity for this week?
Yoga.
Yoga, go to yoga class, great. Did you want to share?
I was gonna clean up my pea patch because
Great.
pull out the plants and break it and crop them.
I love that, and this is a great example of how we can make it more sensible too, right? You're getting kind of two things done at once. You're enjoying movement and you're getting something accomplished as well.
Is walking considered a whole activity?
Is what?
Walking.
Walking, absolutely. Yeah. So, as I'm wrapping up here, if we eat whole foods, if we start moving towards more whole movement in our bodies, we're going to see health changes. As Dr. Hassas mentioned at the beginning, starting to think more about how our health is changing over time can be a lot less frustrating than watching a number on the scale go up or down day to day. So I'd like to just encourage you to start maybe thinking of those SMART goals that Anne was speaking of in terms of health. How do I want to see my health change? Do I want to be able to walk up the stairs to my apartment without feeling out of breath? Do I want to feel more energy in the mid-afternoon? Starting to think about those and tracking those instead of kind of getting frustrated and bogged down in weight, which may or may not change over time. And probably what a lot of us are really looking for is a difference in how we feel anyway. So making those our goals and looking at how those foods and how that movement supports those health goals.
At the university, working with students who are passionate and knowledgeable about nutrition and psychology. They're going to make the world a healthier place by helping other people live healthier lives. So, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so just want to wrap up with a few summary points from our time today. Starting with sensible weight management begins with sensible healthy lifestyle choices. Thinking health first. The power of self-awareness and self-monitoring can help us identify reasons why we eat, such as stress and emotional eating, that sabotage our sensible, healthy lifestyle goals. Slowing down lets us know when we're hungry and satisfied, helps us make sensible, healthy choices, helps us enjoy the full experience of our meals, and even get more of the nutritional benefit of what we eat. The hunger scale, single tasking, taking time for meals, and setting SMART goals are just some of the ways we can start to slow ourselves down. We are all unique individuals that need different types of food and movement for health. We can't possibly prescribe a plan, a universal plan for all of you. Tuning into your own needs is you're gonna find a way that works for you. So eating a diet comprised of a variety of whole foods and moving in ways that nourish our whole being are sensible approaches to health. Shifting our focus from measuring weight to monitoring how our health changes can be less frustrating and more rewarding. So that is some of the key points from today. We wish you actually some well wishes as you bring some of these concepts into the holidays, which can be sometimes challenging. We often make different choices during the holidays. And we encourage you to think about how you can maintain some of these concepts even during the holidays as they are upon us. I wanted to just identify a few of the resources. The handout, there are some of the restaurants in Seattle that have an emphasis on a whole foods diet. If you're interested in consulting with a nutritionist or a counselor, we do have nutrition and counseling shifts here at the Bastyr Center for Natural Health. And I also wanted to let you know about a weight management program that we'll be offering in the spring of next year. It's called Way to Go, and it's an 8-week weight management program for community members who are interested in making lifestyle changes. So some of the concepts we talked about today are introduced in this 8-week weight management program. You get a 1-hour group session and then 25-minute individual sessions. And the facilitators of that program are actually students in the Joint Masters in Nutrition and Psychology program. So if you're interested in that, you can get more information. You can call the Bastyr Center for Natural Health, leave a message. I can give you more information after the talk today, but we'll be starting that in the spring, probably around April, I think. Okay? All right, and we do have a few minutes for questions. But we thank you for your time and for spending the last hour or so with us. Yeah.
I have a question about the Bastyr programs. Do you have a nutrition undergrad program, or is it just undergraduate level?
There is an undergraduate program in nutrition.
Is there a pamphlet here with the different programs?
Martha, I don't know. We can see if we can get you some information about the undergraduate programs.
Sure.
Most of the undergraduate programs at Bastyr are 2 years, so you can transfer in and
yeah, I can talk to anybody who wants
yeah.
or
So Martha would be a good person to talk
Bastyr
about.
website, bastyr.edu, has information about all the programs too.
Yeah.
One of the most important things I've learned is about label reading. If you're going to eat a processed food, look at how long those lists are and see what real food is. And sometimes it'll say natural flavors, and you'll look, it'll say strawberry something, and you'll look in the list, and strawberries aren't even mentioned. So read the label.
And especially if you don't understand the ingredients, you shouldn't be eating them.
Yeah, if you can't pronounce them, picture them, never get.
But even flour is processed. It's not weaker. I'm still learning.
How important is water during the day for
Yeah, so I think that's another place where we can think about the satiety question, right? That sort of that water is hugely important, or hydration is hugely important in our health, both in how our body functions properly and our own feelings of fullness and all of those things. So I'd encourage you to maybe think about adding that to your sort of hunger and thirst scale, right? Like really being aware of how much hydration your body needs. Your body knows best. So rather than saying you have to have X number of ounces per hour or day, I think making sure that you're getting lots of hydration and recognizing how your body feels is really important.
Yeah, it's I mean, I've read some people who are, they're trying to lose weight, and they were drinking 2 gallons of water a day. And obviously they were filling their stomachs up with water, so they couldn't eat much. I guess it was a hydraulic gastro bypass thing.
Well, and oftentimes when you're dieting, what you're losing is weight, water weight. So finding a way to just where you're listening to your hunger and your thirst, and you're regularly nourishing that without these drastic changes is what's going to lead to sustainable lifestyle choices.